I want to thank you all for being here today. My name is Bradley Beck and I work for Design Master Color Tool Incorporated. We're an international color marketing company based in Boulder, Colorado. I'd like to share with you a program that I was fortunate to be part of many years ago. And to start, I'd like to present how I start a program called Growing Up with Flowers. I have a little seed, I put it in the ground, I covered it with earth, and I watered it around. Up comes the stem, and out come the leaves, and up pops the flower that comes from the seed. Flowers come in many colors from all around the world. Flowers give good feelings to all the boys and girls. As you can tell, thank you. As you can tell, my singing is not great. And before you think, has Beck gone and lost it? Or perhaps, he is from Colorado. Did he inhale? I want to assure you that I did not inhale. That is part of this Growing Up with Flowers program of teaching kids about floriculture. How do you grab a bunch of preschool or first grade or kindergarten kids' attention when there's so much going on, all this commotion in a classroom? Well, I learned from firsthand experience that you just can't pass out flowers or talk about flowers or talk about our industry just by being there. So I had to figure out a way to grab these young people's attention. And so I came up with that little song called the Flower Song. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I want to share with you a little bit about what growing flowers is all about, how it started, and things that you can do in your place of business to help build our businesses as professional florists today. So back in 1989, I was with a group of folks called the Young Executives for the Wholesale Florist and Floral Suppliers Association, otherwise known as WFSA. Everybody thinks it's about a dog, but it really isn't. And the wholesale floral suppliers and the wholesalers got together and they had a variety of promotional tools, if you will, at their disposal at the time. There was a voluntary way to gain marketing money, to bring it together and to promote floriculture. Didn't work too well. Then they were trying to do a mandatory version of that, and that didn't work too well. So as young executives, we were tasked with the way of grassroots, getting people started grassroots and trying to get more floriculture into the hands of the consumers. How would you do that? Well, we were given zero as a budget, and we had to come up with an idea. So we thought, why don't we go into the schools and teach kids about flowers? Should be pretty simple. Wrong. Public schools were a little more difficult to start this idea with. Private schools a little less of a problem. But we worked for about 2 or 3 years coming up with a concept. And in 1989, we made a presentation in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we said, what if we could go to the schools and teach kids about floristry, about flowers, where they come from, the beauty of our industry, as well as how to put arrangement together, the history of flowers, the science of flowers, the art of flowers, the culture of flowers. Flowers are how they're a part of our lives every day, and how to build consumption as opposed to what's happening today, which is very holiday oriented. In Europe, it's every day. You go to somebody's house, you're invited for dinner, you buy a bottle of wine, and you bring over some flowers. What do we do in America? We just show up and say, what's for dinner, right? So except in Ben's house. So what we wanted to do is help expand the marketplace. Well, we tried a couple different things, and some things worked and some things did not. But we came up with this idea called Growing Up with Flowers, and I'd like to share it with you today. Growing Up with Flowers is a wonderful program of putting together with wholesalers who were kind of the catalyst of the whole program. The wholesale distributor would supply the flowers, would supply the hard goods, a little bud vase if you were going to give away a bud vase and have the kids arrange with it, maybe conduct tours of the wholesale house, and also have a letter in here. Now this is way before computers were really prevalent, but there's a standard letter to follow and somebody could copy it, put it on their letterhead, send it out to the local retail florist and say, hey, we've got a way to help you grow your business down the way. And so this would hopefully help, like we're doing today, talk to the florist and say, would you participate in this type of program? The next manual was the retailer guide, what the retailer would do. So the retailer is really the key here because they would go into the schools and make the little presentations where flowers come from, how to care for flowers, maybe some stories about flowers. And their payback would be that down the road, you perhaps would have a customer for life. You know, most of the kids today, when they are around flowers, it's for two reasons that we found. One, they have a relative who has passed away, and there's grandma and grandpa up at the mortuary laying horizontally, and there's flowers around there. Now, we love flowers being at sympathy events because they help soften the blow of losing a loved one. But what does that say to a young person? It's a negative connotation potentially. Or let's say dad buys mom flowers for Mother's Day or Valentine's Day. And what does mom or dad say? Well, don't touch those. You know, don't want to have those touched. Again, another potentially negative encounter with flowers. So how do you do a positive encounter? Well, if you start at a young age, telling kids that flowers are part of the life cycle, but they're part of our lives every day in foods, in science and art, we could potentially have a group of folks as customers down the way. So the retailer guide has how to set up a program, who to connect with, a variety of things that will help them be more successful, do's and don'ts. And this manual would be provided by the wholesale distributor to their customers that want to participate. And then the last manual here is our educator guide. And this is helping teachers with a variety of tools to help them use the materials we're providing on state flowers, where flowers come from, science experiments, art experiments, and then resource guides in the back. So, you know, what's the flower of your birth, or what's the state flower? Lots of good material that's in here. And then last but not least, we decided to come up, and what's funny is how things are timeless. We came up with a coloring book, especially for the young kids, flowers from A to Z. And again, this is way before computers were real relevant and you had the software, but you know, we just kind of did an outline of flowers and their names, where they came from as well could be incorporated in this, and how they're grown could be incorporated in this. But it just gave another aspect, especially to the young kids, as a takeaway. So how do you envision a program working? Well, what I've done in the past is I'll work with a local distributor. Say I'm going to be going into the wholesale house or going to the local elementary school. I do area elementary school here in Colorado every year. And the teacher and I come up with a date. I go into the school about 15, 20 minutes early, set up some bud vases, put water in them, put the flowers that I procure out in front. And then what I like to do is start with that little flower song, that how flowers grow. And then I ask the children, you know, where do flowers come from? And they say, well, seeds. And so I'll bring out some seeds. I'll have some Holland bulbs, or I'll have some real small pansies, and I'll pass those along, and the kids get to feel them and touch them. And then I ask them if they want to see some flowers, and I'll pass those around. Now, some people say you shouldn't pass around things because it disturbs the kids, but I find that the kids want to touch and feel, and I want to encourage that. So the seeds are the first part, and I'll ask them, well, these don't have any roots. Where do roots come from? And so we'll get in a little discussion about the root system. What are the things that the flower needs? Well, it needs soil, it needs water, it needs sunshine. And then I talk a little bit about the daisy. The term daisy comes from day's eye. People in England over a long time ago used to watch the flowers, their heads would be drooping, and the sun would come out, the head would come up, and the flower would follow the sun, which is known as heliotropism. And then at night, the sun would go down, the head would go down. They would call that flower the day's eye. It'd open up during the day, close at night, shorten over time to the daisy. Kids get that. Or I talk about dinosaurs. All the kids love about dinosaurs. So Dr. Robert Bacher, I had the good fortune of meeting him. He believes the reason why we have flowers today on plants is because dinosaurs were eating them so quickly that the flowers couldn't, or the plants couldn't reproduce quick enough. So they created flowers over time, evolved, and that's why we have the variety we have today. Little stories like this help the kids understand a little bit of the history of the flowers. And I talk about where flowers come from. I'll bring out heliconia or protea or ginger, and say they're from Hawaii, or kangaroo paw from New Zealand, or carnations from Colombia. And they get a sense that flowers come from all around the world. And then I'll ask the kids, why do we give flowers? A lot of them will say, well, my dad gives mom flowers on Valentine's Day. And I said, yeah, that's good. That's lovely. We want to encourage it year-round. Or my mom has flowers in her garden. That's awesome. I love doing the little kids. And you want to be terrified. I mean, talking to the adults is easy. Talking to little kids, is frightening. But once you do it once or twice, the questions that they have, I mean, besides laughing like crazy, you really get a fun sense of this is a neat thing to do for future generations. I started this back in early 90s with my daughter's class in kindergarten, preschool, first grade. There's a whole generation now that knew me as the flower guy. Well, I'm in hard goods. I couldn't tell you a rose from a carnation half the time. But that didn't matter because these kids had their first positive exposure to flowers as young people. And then I'll ask the kids if they like to put an arrangement together. And we have those bud vases I talked about earlier. I'll have some filler, some leather leaf, some carnations. I'll give them a bunch. They'll put them in the bud vase. They take them home to mom and dad. The key there for the florist is the florist can have a little hang tag that says, when these flowers expire, please bring them back. We'll fill this up for free, half price, 2 for 1, whatever the florist wants to do in the local market area, but encouraging a new generation of consumers. So here's my call to action for you today. The Grown Up with Flowers program was really about helping our industry grow over time. I think it's better than that. If each of us as retail florists or as wholesalers were to adopt a school, private or a public school, go into that school and do a little 30-minute program, ask questions, answer questions, and then give a little arrangement away and teaching the kids how to put it together. We in the next generation will have that first opportunity to get that young man who's coming in for his first prom to buy flowers. Or when he dates that young lady after high school and gets married, a potential customer. Or when they have their first child, baby arrangements, welcoming that baby. And even to the anniversaries, life cycles of when a potential death in the family. And using you as a professional florist because there's a relationship there. Walt Disney, one of my heroes, once said, you can dream the most beautiful dream, but it's going to take people to make that dream a reality. And you as professional florists in this room can make the difference by reaching out to a local school, starting a Growing Up with Flowers program. And I would be happy to help you get that started. In closing, just to prove that anybody can do this program, I'd like to invite you all to stand up and join with me in doing the flower song. Now, if I can get kids to do this, I can get adults to do it. So here it goes. I have a little seed, I put it in the ground, I covered it with earth, and I watered it around. Up comes a stem, and out come the leaves, and up pops the flower that comes from the seed. Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. My name is Bradley Beck. Thank you so much for indulging me and getting up and singing that song with me. Now I'd open up to questions that you may have.
Brad, I have a question.
Yes.
How, for instance, if I were going to choose a school to go to present this program, how do I make sure that not all of us rush to the same school at the same time? Do you have some sort of way to...
Yeah, great question, Christy. So what I would recommend is normally the local neighborhood school or perhaps a school that your child attends. So if you have a relative or yourself have children, I would do that school. And normally I would bet that your competition is in the same geographical area. So you could do one in your area and you could do one in your area. And probably do it at a variety of grade levels. So I like to go into the preschool, kindergarten, first grade classes in my local area. And I usually have the instructors calling me saying, let's set up a date now. And I'm always trying to share with them, okay, not the week before Valentine's Day, not the week before Mother's Day. Make sure it's before the end of the year. It's not that last week because it's usually tough and the kids aren't ready to, they've already checked out. So good question, thank you. Other questions? Yes, Frank.
Do you find that if you're asking permission to do this in the school wants to figure out, the class wants to figure out a way to integrate this into their curriculum, to whatever they're particularly studying? Or?
Great. So the question was, how do you integrate this into the curriculum? And usually in the spring, most schools are either doing a science or they're doing a cultural aspect, and you can pretty much weave your material that we have and we can provide for you during that time of the year. One of the things I find helpful is I've tried to do it in the public schools, a little harder to get in there because there's all kinds of permissions And as a professional florist, you can say I'm part of the community. But I find the public schools are a little tougher. The private schools a little easier to get into. So for instance, when my daughter was little, I was able to go in and say, hey, Miss Alcorn, I'd be happy to come in and do it. And for 5 years, Miss Alcorn kept calling me, even though my daughter moved on. So there's a relationship there, and it's a great question. So yes, you can put it part of the curriculum, whether it's science. One of the things I like to do is take 2 clear bud bases, and I'll put a little dye in one of the bud bases. Put 2 carnations, one in the dye, one in the regular bud base. Observation, ask the children. Okay, and the next day, watch which one turns a certain color. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, I know, they raise their hand, it's going to turn green. But why? Well, because I've taught them a little bit about the leaves being like pumps, pumping the water up the capillaries up to the head of the bloom, to the flower. A little bit of science. When we talk about where flowers come from, learning that they come from all around the world and their transportation systems that either by air or by truck are brought here to, let's say, North America, where most of our flowers come from Colombia, as you well know, or Ecuador. We have a contingent of growers on the West Coast in California. Most of that product is trucked to the wholesale distributor. But flowers come from Thailand and Kenya and Russia and all around the world nowadays. So it's interesting to know where flowers come from and the variety. So, great question. Yes, Mitch.
What's this going to cost me as a business owner to sort of jump in and take a part of it?
So what's it going to cost you, Mitch? Basically your time. I know some florists that will buy the flowers, buy the containers, kind of do what they want to do to make a successful program. But what I have found that you will get a lot of help from your distributors, from the local growers as well, to provide the fresh flowers. The containers you can get from a variety of sources. In fact, you don't have to buy the containers. Working with the instructor, you can have milk cartons, and they can paint them or draw on them, or use an old bottle that they can bring home from home to be their bud base. So minimal cost, the cost of the flowers, but mainly your time. Preparing beforehand. One thing that I learned right on, I'm not a professional florist like you all, so I have an appreciation for knives. I was cutting flowers beforehand and slipped and cut my finger, and red does not look good on white carnations. So you want to make sure that you cut everything beforehand. I use scissors now, thankfully. I'm not as smart as you folks. And so you want to make sure your product is all prepared beforehand and then make the presentation. Another thing I did a long time ago too to get the kids' attention is I created a puppet show. And the puppet show has a little frog and a little flower, and they sing the flower song, and that kind of grabbed the kids' attention. I stopped using it because it's kind of antiquated, but there's all kinds of things that you can do personally in your shop to prepare for it, bring odds and ends. You can make an arrangement in foam, floral foam, but it's really up to you how you adapt the material. There's no right way to do it. It's a great question, thank you. Yes, Lisa.
I was wondering how many people you see as an ideal group to present to. Is this like an entire assembly in front of the entire school, or do you recommend that we go into different classrooms? And if we only have a few classrooms, maybe what age group is best?
Great question, thank you. So how many kids? Really, most classrooms are anywhere from 15 to 20, 25, somewhere around there is about good to handle. You can do it individually in the classrooms if you have a relationship with a teacher. For an assembly, it's usually too much chaos, so I would do it class specific. I usually try to do it in the spring rather than in the fall. Availability of flowers makes it easier to do, but it's really up to you and the teacher and when you can do it. So hopefully I answered that question.
Which like if I only had a couple age groups?
I like the younger kids. I like the kindergarten, preschool. It's interesting if you do it 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you get a different course set of questions. You're a little more focused on the science. You're a little more focused on the culture rather than the general. But I'm not that smart like you are, so not being a professional florist, I would have a little harder time myself doing it. But you, being more knowledgeable about where flowers come from, using the Latin terminology, their genus and so forth, that may be easier for you to do and do a presentation in your market area that would be successful. So, great question. Yeah, Ben.
She asked both of my questions.
Oh, okay.
She's too close to my head. So pulling it out.
Good, good. Yes, sir.
Yes, Brad, thank you so much for bringing this forward. I like the ideas that you're expressing to us. But for me as a retailer, I would like to do this, and there's several schools in my area. Is there a way that I can include maybe some tags or something with the flowers that are given to the children, maybe to introduce my store to that area?
Sure, great concept. That is a possibility, and really the way the structure of the program is, it's there to give you kind of guidelines, but by no means do you have to follow it exactly. It's there as suggestions, things that have worked really well in marketplaces where we've tried it. But in your area, sure, you could try that and see what happens, see the response. I know one florist that afterwards gave individual roses to the children and had a little tag, you know, take this home, put it in water, bring mom and dad by the next time, and we'd be happy to replace that rose for you. Had the shop name, just kind of a nice little giveaway, a little more expensive. I like to use carnations because they're a little less money, and they're year-round, pretty much, that you can get that variety of flower. But yeah, lots of different things, different marketplaces people have tried and been successful. So whatever works in your market, I would say try, and if it doesn't work, adapt it until you see something that does work. Yeah. Especially in the inner city schools. If you folks have schools close by in the inner city, I think they would welcome that more so than, let's say, in the urban area or the less urban areas on the suburbia, just because they don't have those opportunities. So it's a good positive way for our industry to work with those inner city schools as well. So, yes, Christy.
Has this program been going on long enough to see an increase in sales, maybe when these children grow up?
Great question. So had the industry gotten really behind it, my answer would be enthusiastically yes. But we have not had really the whole industry support. One, because people just went off and did different things. And so I've been doing it now for 26 years. First in Southern California, and then when I moved here 17 years ago, I started doing it in my local elementary school. And I can tell you there is a positive impact. Now, we don't have a florist in town, we used to, but just the exposure the children have to the flower business and the industry in general, it's been positive. I get that feedback through my Optimist Club that I'm involved with the various instructors. And what's amazing is, as these kids have grown up, they still call me the flower guy or the flower man, which I find amazing because I'm not a florist like you. I would never put that moniker on myself. But they don't know that. All they know is I was the guy who came to their class and presented this program on floriculture and flowers and the beauty of our industry. So, wow, if each one of you picked a school, what a great marketing opportunity downstream for us as an industry and individually as a store. Yes?
I know you talked about it, putting this for those younger kids, but I also think there'd be a potential market, but it'd have to be changed the presentation a little bit. But
Sure.
when you get up into high school, when the guys are going out on their first dates, or their maybe homecoming, or for the prom or something, when they're talking about flowers, then do you think you could adapt this for that market, or do you think there would be any potential there?
Great question. So the question was, how do you adapt it to upper grades, especially in high school, and that young man, the first time he buys a boutonniere for a young lady for a dance. And you know what's interesting, Ben, is a lot of schools in certain areas have floral programs, and they have little flower shops. Now, not as many as there used to be, but that happened mainly in the South that I'm aware of, but schools around the country have floriculture, agricultural programs still, and they'll have a little flower shop that's open on limited hours, and they'll sell flowers prior to a dance. So yes, it can be adapted to that, and I know colleges for definitely, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, who I used to be affiliated with, they had a flower shop, and they did that at the college level, and Mississippi State University does that. So there's colleges around the country that have floral programs, and they're still robust. So yeah, you can adapt it to upper grades. Great question, thank you. Yes,
Can we
Richard?
use this program in, say, Cub Scouts and Brownies?
Absolutely, I think it would be great for either one of those organizations, because one, they probably could earn a badge by doing something in the community, perhaps doing a program like this and then taking the flowers to an old folks home, or perhaps growing the flowers themselves, watching them grow, harvesting them, and then maybe doing a program like this. So I could see that that possibility definitely. So yeah, service clubs can work with young people, or the Scouts or Indian Guides, any of those groups, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. I think that's a wonderful idea. Happy to sign you up now. Anything else? Yes.
Very quickly, I think Ben and Richard have brought up some ideas that have just quickly grown in my mind, because you talked about the children, and I know we love to watch the children's eyes just light up with the songs and the programs, and I think Ben said a lot about the high schools and Richard, the Boy Scouts. What about science projects?
Right.
I'm hearing just the
Right.
one you told earlier about just the colored water and what it does to the flower, and science projects for the late elementary, maybe middle school.
Right. So there are some great projects in this book, and as I said, somebody's working on this right now to update it a little bit. But flowers that heal, how to use flowers, things you should know before doing science projects. Why do flowers droop in an experiment? How do flowers get water? Things of that nature. Do flowers need food? A variety of things geared on a scientific analysis and observation that are already in here and that can be adapted to the classroom rather speedily. You could do that, any of these things, and adapt it to your question earlier to the curriculum. So I think, yes, at any grade level, there's always a need for material. And so if we can expose the classroom to our industry, to flowers and floriculture, we all benefit down the road. Because if people don't have a fear of flowers, well, I hear this all the time, well, I don't buy flowers because they die. Ugh, drives me nuts, drives you nuts. Have you ever been to a funeral without flowers? It's really, talk about the kiss of death for both our industry as in lieu of. I think you should be sending flowers and contributing to whatever organization that the family wants you to contribute to. But one of the things I think that's beneficial for us is to expose flowers to the greater culture and get them to use them every day. That's why the mass market has been so successful. The housewife can put a bouquet into her grocery shopping, and if her husband is looking down and saying, "What's this?" Well, hopefully that doesn't happen, but a lot of ladies buy flowers at the mass market, at the supermarket, because it's one, it's convenient, and two, it's part of grocery shopping. We've got to get them to come to the professional florist, to the standalone florist, to the florist that is down the street in the neighborhood, not just for that special occasion, but for every day. And how do we do that? How do we create that relationship in our neighborhoods, in our communities, so people will say, I need flowers for a party I'm having this weekend. I think I'll go down to Betty's, because Betty has wonderful flowers. They last long, they smell great. You have a relationship with Betty's florist, and that's why people, I think, gravitate to this program, because it really, to your point earlier, doesn't cost a lot other than time. It's the flowers, whatever those cost, and most distributors will either donate or give it to you at their cost, and then you do the program. I think over a few years' time, you'll start seeing those people, especially the parents. The parents appreciate the fact that you're spending the time to do something for their children, and they see value in that. So great question. Thank you.
I like your program.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yes, I'm extremely intrigued and I want to sign up. So what are the next steps I need to take?
So I'd be happy to send you the PDF of all of these. All I need is your contact information. And later tonight, I'll send them off to you. They're in black and white. They're not in the color. The coloring book, you just copy off each page and staple it, and you can pass those out. You can put your name, your shop name on the back, or adapt it any way you want to. But I'm happy to give this out gratis to you to get it started in your neighborhood. And I'd love to be able to come back here next year and say, what were your successes? How did this benefit your business? And maybe some of the things, that pitfalls that you've come across, what you did, and I wouldn't do that again. But share with your fellow florists, and I think that would be awesome if you could do that. Yeah, Christy.
Well, listening to Richard and Mark talk about the different areas where you could present this program, I was thinking of survival schools. You talk about the different kinds of flowers you can eat.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the sky's the limit almost.
Well, what's interesting is, and I'll bring sunflower seeds, and give them to the kids, and I go, these are sunflowers. I go, absolutely, and one or two will put it in their mouth. Hopefully they don't choke on them. But, you just got to watch, and you have the teachers there and the teacher's assistants. So it's always helpful to have people to watch. But yeah, there are flowers that are grown specifically, mostly for, visual. You see them in salads, the nasturtium or other types of flowers. There's a great opportunity to talk about poinsettia. For every year during Christmas, we always hear that poinsettias are poisonous. No, they're not. If your kid eats it, they're not going to die. If your dog eats it, they're not going to die. If they eat 10,000 poinsettias, maybe they'll have some upset stomach, but So this is an opportunity to talk about poinsettias, that there are plants that are poisonous and some that aren't. The poinsettia is not. So it's a great opportunity for us to correct some of those wrongs out there in the public. So I think I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm happy to give you the Growing Up with Flowers information. Appreciate it.
Thank